Welcome to the Progress Texas Happy Hour.
Welcome back to the Progress Texas Happy Hour. I'm Progress Texas Advocacy and Development Coordinator Tatum Owens. Censorship in public and higher education is at an all-time high, with recent events including the death of Charlie Kirk bringing increased scrutiny to our classrooms. From DEI bans to 10 commandments hanging in school, it seems that constitutional battles are popping up left and right, thanks to proponents of various culture wars against teachers and students plainly. Joining us today is Texas AFT's President Zeph Capo. Previously, he was the president of the Houston Federation of Teachers, and before becoming a union leader, Capo was a science teacher. Thank you for joining us and welcome.
Tatum, thank you for having me.
So first off, would you tell us about this new lawsuit, just jumping into it, against the TEA, Texas Education Agency, where AFT alleges that Commissioner Mike Morath unleashed a wave of retaliation and disciplinary actions against teachers when he urged school districts to report reprehensible and inappropriate content about Kirk's killing last year?
Yeah, that's right. Tatum, roughly in September of 2025, every superintendent across the state of Texas received a memo from the Commissioner of Education, Mike Morath, not really providing guidance, but really presenting an opportunity, and I'm going to use my colloquialism here, basically creating a snitch line for superintendents to turn in any educator that basically said anything about Charlie Kirk. And that's really what this was about, because the letter, the memo, the directive that he gave talked about what he believed to be reprehensible or what he believed to be inappropriate comment, but not a lot of direction on what that actually meant. Extremely vague. And that's one of the problems here. If our members even wanted to comply with his directive, it gave them no direction in which to actually do that. So that is a huge issue. On top of the prima facie, the face complaint that we have, which is the blurring of the workplace and people's, individual citizens' right to speak out about public events, current events that are happening in their own country. I think it's really important that everybody understand, because there's a lot of confusion. Back when this issue came out, Morath didn't just issue his memo. There were a lot of keyboard warriors, social media paid individuals that were doing everything they could to try to make as much out of this issue politically as they absolutely could. And, teachers, along with other public employees, got included in this. So there was, in essence, a frenzy that was created. And a lot of that frenzy was so incorrect and so much misinformation. And probably the biggest piece of misinformation that's permeated through the public is these were not opinions or discussions that were happening in a classroom or, frankly, anywhere near a public school. For most of our members, these were conversations they were having on a private social media page that did not include students, did not include family members of their students per se, that was set to just their close-knit circle of friends and family discussing this issue. And we kind of find it very ironic that the state of Texas has been accusing these people of indoctrinating, when frankly, I would turn this around. They were actually examples in many ways, though some people may not like their verbiage, may not have liked their positions. They weren't the types of things that were described in most of the cases, by the public. These were teachers doing what they do best, which is pushing the other side out there, making people critically analyze, oftentimes simply repeating things Charlie Kirk had said publicly in many of his own, First Amendment speech sessions, putting the other side of the issue on the table. And why that's important, why that matters to our members, none of this happens in context. And we find it very ironic that people were taking it, that people were making fun of his shooting. And I think that they need to look beyond that. Nobody would do that. First of all, we find any type of political violence reprehensible. That's what's reprehensible, the people actually committing violence. What's reprehensible are the people in office that allow us to go without proper regulation to hopefully mitigate some of this violence. That's what's reprehensible, not the fact that teachers, particularly teachers in Texas in public schools, that walk into campuses each and every day and know they are walking onto a campus in a state with some of the highest, if not the highest, rates of gun violence on public school campuses in our country. That's the context with which our members were reacting to this heinous killing of a social media pundit, a political figure. I think it makes it even more crucial that someone stand up, and I'm very proud of our members for actually standing up and taking this lawsuit forward and being part of it. Because if you don't stand up, you're going to get stepped on. And that's exactly what's been happening. And our state government has actually been using kids and families as kind of the subterfuge and the scapegoat for pushing their own political agenda. Because in fact, what they have shown us through action time and again is they're the actual ones that want to have ideological discussions in their classrooms. They're the ones that actually only want to have a one-sided discussion in the classroom, because our teachers are very used to, and have for decades been very used to, presenting all sides of an issue, making students think about what the other side feels and agrees with. As a matter of fact, like, don't all of us remember being in debate class where your classes, or English or social studies, where literally the class was divided and half the class took one position on an issue and the other class took another? And I don't remember any of my teachers ever forcing me to pick which side to go on. They simply were forcing me to make sure that my arguments were based in fact, based in logic, and that we were following a stream of thought that brought greater clarity to the public discussion and discourse on issues that mattered most to our democracy. Nothing has changed about that except the issues that matter, and other people who maybe have not had a voice historically in our country are actually having one now, and rightly should have one. And that scares people. That makes people feel that they're losing their own power rather than elevating the power they have by sharing it with other people. That's what's going on in our schools. That's why this is important. And that's why we've taken this lawsuit forward.
Thank you so much for sharing that context. And if only our teachers were able to just do their job and teach. And to that point, this is a very hostile work environment to be walking into every day, between it, as we have shown for, 30 years without a raise for teacher pay here in Texas. You would probably know better than me, right? But I mean, there's so many different factors. And then you have on top of it this layer of increased scrutiny of your private life and detail. So I'd love to hear about the teachers named in the lawsuit and what the implications were for what they actually said. What is actually at hand here in this lawsuit?
Yeah, I mean, they said some of the things that most adults would say in conversations that we're having back and forth. As a matter of fact, some of the teachers that were terminated for their private speech or their comments on social media were simply posing questions in a very Socratic method, like posing a question back. Didn't maybe he go too far in his rhetoric with how he pushed people in his conversations? One of the comments that I think in adult lingo, when you are a teacher who has watched your colleagues be murdered in public schools, and both, and your students in both Uvalde and Santa Fe and other spots, and you think about, are you going to be next? And you hear someone who said, the price we have to pay to keep the Second Amendment is a few people have to die. And then it happens to him, someone that is living that exposure, living that life, having to deal with that, understanding that their governor, their government cares more about this political pundit and his feelings than they actually do about taking care of everyday Texans. When you say karma's a bitch, I don't take that as inciting violence. I don't take that as celebrating death. I take that as actually a pretty profound statement that says you get back a lot of times what you put out there. And people forget. And look, I get it. I have empathy for people that saw the good things this man did. Everybody does things that people agree and disagree with and what have you. And certainly nobody should have to lose their life for what they believe, right, wrong, or indifferent. But he also chose to put himself out there as a public figure. He also chose to make himself part of the policy discussion. And if he was even true to what he said he believed, I would think if he was here, he would probably be against these teachers being disciplined or treated in this way for speaking out on a matter of public discourse by their own government. He would have no choice to do that based on what his positions were in public, regardless of where we disagree on so many policy decisions. When we get down to the heart of the matter, I don't have to agree with what you have to say to defend your right to say it in an appropriate place and time.
What are teachers' responses to these alleged attacks on their First Amendment rights? Those included, and also generally what you've heard from the employees in the union. How have you seen this as their employee representative largely, and in what ways has the culture shifted to censorship?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So there were approximately 350 incidents reported. I can guarantee you every single teacher and likely every single school employee across the state of Texas is watching this closely. They're paying attention to what happens because frankly, right now, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's fear, there's concern, like what they can say, what they can't say. Is it going to jeopardize their career? Is it going to jeopardize their ability to be able to feed their family and put a roof over their head? And that often then morphs into anger. And that's where a lot of our members are who have been mistreated right now. Anger that the system let them down. Anger that some people seem to think that they shouldn't have as many rights as any other American citizen to participate in the thought process of how their government reacts to some of these decisions. And people forget schools, in this case, in public schools, and the Commissioner of Education as an apparatus of the state of Texas are government. And it is government that we are speaking out to and about when these issues get brought up, and those people that involve themselves in government. I could probably say a lot about what they feel about our Commissioner of Education and governor spending more time with Turning Point USA trying to put chapters in each of our high schools than actually trying to make our high schools secure for the people that are in those buildings. So there are ripple effects. There is a context in which all of this happens. And we have yet to even begun to see how it's going to affect the academic process, what type of chilling effect it's going to have on classroom discussions inside and outside of schools and in our greater society, because there is no doubt whatsoever with the members that have been part of the lawsuit, been part of the 350 incidents, that their speech has been chilled, but it reaches far beyond that. For every single one of them that has been impacted, there are hundreds more that are in the same position that now do not feel as comfortable to attend a rally, to speak out about what is going wrong in our schools. And, part of me wants to say, was this part of the intent? We have a governor that's up for election. His party has been in charge of our public schools for the last 30 some odd years, and they have no one to blame for where we are if they don't like it than themselves. I think we've yet to begin to see the ramifications of how this policy is going to play out on our schools and in our public spaces altogether overall.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing up Greg Abbott's push to put Turning Point in our public school classrooms, because as I'm sure that you are well aware, Turning Point USA, if you go visit their website, which I'm not necessarily recommending you do that, but if you want to know, they have a tip line on there as well. So you see this combined effort for really targeting teachers. Can you share with our audience any final calls to action or how they can pay attention to this battle?
First and foremost, I think, and this is one of the things that we've seen. First of all, I think in many cases, frankly, social media is an absolute cesspool. But anybody that can go on and offer a word of encouragement, it was really interesting after the media articles came out, being able to see the public responses before the AI chatbots got involved in this conversation. Because you can clearly see the ones who didn't read a thing, but started putting comments. So just a simple, we stand with teachers is goes a long way. They're paying attention to these things as well, too. Get involved at the local level. How can you support, push to make sure people are engaged in school board elections, because people often forget those. And the heart of where most of these policy discussions happen are at school boards, and we see what happens when people don't pay attention. We get censorship, we get chapters pulled out of books, we get really bad things happening, and students get a far inferior education when that happens. So vote all the way down ballot and make sure that you're participating in those municipal elections. It's really important.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Zeph Capo. Is there any resources that we can point people toward with Texas AFT?
Yeah, absolutely. TexasAFT.org. You can sign up for our hotline if you're really interested in public education issues. We put out a weekly newsletter that has to do with everything coming out of the Capitol on public education and higher education. It's a great place to keep up with not only our lawsuit, what's happening with it, but so many other issues as well, too. Sign up for our hotline, and you can also find plenty of other resources, particularly if you are a classroom educator yourself. From the academic side to the policy side, it's a great resource.
Thank you so much. And that is going to be all for today. Our mission at Progress Texas is to improve and save Texans' lives by acting on our shared, bold, progressive values. And that starts with countering the billionaire and corporate-funded disinformation machine. While we enjoy the support of hundreds of partners, chances are that you, dear listener, have not joined the team yet. So if you're a regular, let's get you on board right now. Big thanks to our recent monthly supporters, Marlon May, Christina Ayala, and Linda Miller. We appreciate all of you very much. Join the team now at progresstexas.org. Thanks now. Catch you next time.